What's up, folks? This is Dan from Discern, and these are my thoughts on the new EP from Gawvi, Lost in Hue. Gawvi is a music producer known mostly for his work with Reach Records and artists such as Lecrae, Trip Lee, Tadashi, Eric Miner, Andy Mineo, just to name a few. He began working with these artists, producing for them back in 2008, I believe, but he recently, just this year, was officially signed to Reach Records. His production style is very modern and current, heavily influenced by pop and electronic dance music. In the past few months, since his introduction as a Reach Records artist, he's been dropping new singles here and there, and the hype has seriously been building. A lot of people are looking and waiting for him to release his debut project under Reach Records. He was on tour even recently with Andy Mineo and Propaganda and some other artists as well. I mean, he's been building that hype. Just last week, then, he released his EP called Lost In Hue, and he actually plans to release another EP in September, which I don't know if that will be a follow-up or a continuation of this EP. I mean, I kind of think so, actually, considering the talk, if I remember correctly, around Gawvi as he joined Reach Records. They were saying he's working super hard, he's gearing up to drop a big new project, and certainly a 4-track EP doesn't really qualify as a big new project, so this can't be all he's working on, right? You know, I do expect the next EP to be related to this one somewhat. On Gawvi's previous releases, through most of his producer career, he's been producing more rap and hip-hop tracks. He's had a flavor of pop and EDM splashed throughout those tracks, but it's been more hip-hop oriented rather than dance or club related. But after he was signed to Reach Records, one of his first tracks that he released, the track Vena, which was heavily dubstep inspired, has kicked off a shift in his sound to a more explicitly pop and dance style, things that are very radio popular, radio friendly these days. I kind of enjoy this style actually a little bit more from him. I think his hip-hop productions often suffered from what I'm gonna affectionately call a triple note turd. Hear me out. It's these overly simple, unflattering melodies that consist of 2 or 3 notes that usually ascend and then descend in melody. And if you sit at a piano, just choose 3 notes. Sometimes there are even notes right next to each other on the keys. Just play them up in pitch, and then back down, and then repeat, and then back down. And then you sort of play them with a little bit of a hip-hop styled beat and rhythm, a groove to it. That's all it is. It's silly how musically lacking these types of melodies are. They're monumentally uninteresting and vapid. Anyway, all that to say, I think he has a better mindset for pop-inspired production than hip-hop inspired production. So basically, the musical style on this EP is more of a pro than a con for me. I think one of the coolest things about the first track on here, the song Late Nights, which I think is the best track on this EP, is how it really seamlessly transitions from like a halftime backbeat hip-hop groove to a more double-time British EDM style groove. You've got these offbeat hi-hats, there's more piano going on. Really, really cool. That both moods and styles sound great, and the transition that he makes between the two is really slick. I just thought it really slips by you, I guess. It's so smooth it can slip by you without even being noticed at first. The second track, the song You Are, it's some terribly bland and overused Christian radio pop. I mean, I was legitimately surprised that this came from Gawvi. It really doesn't sound anything like him. It does sound highly stereotypical. The lyrics, too, are just so brain-drainingly vapid and trite. So broad and generic. They've almost lost any meaning. Just look them up, seriously, on Genius.com. It's just undefined jargon about God's love, presumably God's love. One of Gawvi's problems, I think, with his previous releases and this EP is from the small things to the big things, the sound he uses, the beat he makes, the overall style, the lyrics sometimes, which I know are really not his, but they're from whoever he's featuring. All these different pieces, I guess I feel like I've heard it all before. They're your typical pop, electronic dance music tracks, and then you top it off with typical generic lyrics about a vague god and vague spirituality. And speaking of things that I feel like I've heard before, the third track, "Out My Mind," is a clear as day mimicking of the tones and sounds produced by Skrillex on Justin Bieber's most recent album. You have these round, hollow, percussive sounds, like hitting a long PVC pipe. It's that ringing, thudding sound, dum dum, kind of like a sound that Blue Man Group uses extensively, if you're familiar with that. And you also have those pan flute style whistles as well, that airy, breathy sound that prances and skirts around like a butterfly, always has a perky melody to it. I was quite surprised to hear he was using both those sounds in one song, in a song with a style like this. I mean, this song is already coated in a sonic paint that imitates that Skrillex sound so much, the sound that was blowing up less than a year ago. And look, it's not that artists can't find influence from other artists or even borrow ideas. That's really what most art is. It's learning from someone else, from what they're doing something similar yourself. Because that artist is who's inspired you, and you're doing now what you want to do with that sound. That's okay in principle, obviously, imitating and pulling from, in a sense, other artists. But when you do it with sounds that, or I should say, such a multiple of sounds that have basically driven and defined the radio, pop, and dance music styles throughout this year, because obviously these sounds have now moved beyond just these Bieber tracks. If you do that, you're kind of setting your sound up and your song up to be a faceless imitator, not a standout. And in terms of, I guess, his sounds, another one of his more staple sounds, one that he uses and it's featured a lot throughout this EP, is those pitched vocal samples. They're those little snippets and vocal segments that function as a little melodic phrase or a moment. You can't really tell what the vocals are saying, you can't pinpoint the lyrics, but really the melody is the focal point. And look, I guess, yes, those features are always entertaining on some level. They're sweet, they're exciting, but they can't make up for a sterile arrangement, And if these interesting pitched vocal samples are encompassed by ordinary and generic sounds and chord progressions, like I feel like they are on this EP far too often, that's just not enough to get that song from sinking under its own weight. The vocal samples aren't enough to make or break a song. They're the icing on the cake, but you got to make the cake first. And I have a theory, actually, about the current state of electronic music. If you let me go on a tangent a little bit. The difficulty with making music in this genre, making it to be engaging and personal, is that it doesn't have the human nuance, human touch, and interaction with the music that non-electronic music has. And my theory is that producers like Gawvi, on this EP even, have realized this difficulty and have started using voices as synth sounds. It's nothing new, obviously. I don't mean they've started as in recently, but using those as synth sounds, turning vocal samples into instruments, if you will, using the sound of a human voice, even if it's lyrically unintelligible and has been mangled and chopped and pitch shifted in production. They use these sounds to give the music a subtle but I think effective human breath. It's a sound that has more character, unexpected variability, more so than a standard synth sound. In electronic music, the sounds that a producer is painting with are going to sound exactly the same every time they come up, unless the producer forces something to be different. He makes a change. The computer doesn't make mistakes. It doesn't vary its sound. It does exactly what it's told. So a human performance, on the other hand, be it vocally or instrumentally, it just has a rich identity that a computer can't replicate. That performance adds a level of character and personality that's just hard to come by with synthetic sounds alone. Tangent-wise, I guess what I'm trying to say in a wandering roundabout way is I like the vocal samples he uses. I really do. I think they add some spice and some excitement to the tracks. But those features in the context of the whole song, not really enough, I think, to make these tracks anything more than average. In closing, something I feel about this EP as a whole, it's good in terms of quality. It's mixed very well. It's very crisp. The music seems flawless. Some of that is from the post-production cleaning and beautifying. But from an artistic perspective, the music is just not surprising. It's not interesting. It's not even that exciting or entertaining. It's more something that I could see putting on in the background, not really paying attention to, because it's not distracting. It's not abrasive. It is well produced, I said. But this just makes me unsure, I guess, about Gawvi's next EP and releases beyond that. There's not a whole lot of ideas here on this EP that I find very impressive. There's a lot of rehashing of familiar territory, even if it's not his territory. He's replicating the sonic landscape of today's radio pop and EDM sounds so much that his songs really do feel like it's all been done before. And there's just an unappealing pining and grasping for that pop radio sound. I mean, you see it even in the vocal features, who sound like cookie cutter versions of a female pop star, a la Ariana Grande, and a male pop star, a la Justin Timberlake. The whole project just feels this way. Save for the first track, I think. I think that track is quite good and quite unique. But basically, I think he has the capability to expand his sound, to push off from the island of generic dance pop and create waves in a new direction. He's shown that he has a wild and spazzy side, a more unkept and frenetic style on his song Vena, and even some of his production for Reach Records in the past. And now that he's untethered to a specific artist, he's producing his own projects. I want to see what he can do, I want to see him make something that reflects his personality more so than a replication of the style of his influencers. I've put a link to this album in the description below and a link to Gawvi's Twitter if you want to check him out over there, see how his next EP is coming along. Alright folks, that is all for this video. Thank you for sticking with me. Thank you for watching this album review. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to the channel. Join the growing community of cool cats we've got over here. Remember, new album reviews just like this release every Friday, and new track reviews release every Wednesday. If you have a question or a comment about this album or not about this album, you can comment below this video. You can tweet at me at discernreviews. You can send me an email, discernreviews@gmail.com. Do you think I'm being too hard on Gawvi, for sounding too mainstream or generic? Have you listened to this EP? What did you think of it? Are you in agreement with me about his sound, or do you think I'm full of it? I'm a big, dumb, pop music hating hipster. Anyway, let me know what you think. Hope this helps. See ya.